In Singapore, there's a building where you can be fined thousands of dollars for a single wrong step. But it's not what you think. This city-state holds secrets that challenge everything you believe about modern Asia. Behind the gleaming towers and pristine streets lies a nation where ancient traditions govern intimate relationships, where chewing gum is contraband, and where a bowl of soup can determine your entire social standing. But here's what will truly shock you. In this hyper-controlled society, there's a dating culture so progressive it makes Western nations look conservative. Young Singaporeans practice something called DTR, defining the relationship with mathematical precision. What does this mean, and how does it work? Stay until the end because we are going to uncover that, alongside other mysteries that have been hidden from you. What you're about to discover will shatter every assumption about this island nation, and by the end, your perspective on what makes a modern society will be completely transformed. You will also have to tell us in the comments whether you, as a person, can practice this Singaporean DTR. If you're ready to see the world differently, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because this journey into Singapore's hidden truths is just the beginning. Now, let's uncover the real Singapore. Number 1. The underground cities beneath your feet. Beneath Singapore's immaculate streets stretches a hidden metropolis that most visitors never see. This isn't just a network of tunnels. It's an entire climate-controlled universe, connecting shopping centers, train stations, and office buildings across the city center. The underground walkway system spans over 200 kilometers, originally designed not for convenience, but for survival. During the 1960s, Singapore's founding fathers feared invasion and created these passages as civilian evacuation routes. Today, locals navigate this subterranean world daily, moving from Orchard Road to Marina Bay without ever touching the scorching tropical sun. What makes this extraordinary is how it reveals Singapore's deepest philosophy. The belief that harsh environments should be conquered through engineering, not endured. The underground represents the nation's core identity. Small spaces maximized through brilliant design. Walking through these tunnels during lunch hour feels like witnessing a choreographed dance. Thousands of people flow through narrow passages with mechanical precision, yet somehow it never feels crowded or chaotic. What do you think drives this almost supernatural efficiency? Is it cultural conditioning or brilliant urban planning? Share your thoughts in the comments below. But the underground holds darker secrets about Singapore's relationship with control. Number 2. The tissue paper treaty that rules social order. At exactly 11:47 a.m. in any Singapore hawker center, witness something that defies logic. A small packet of tissues placed on a plastic chair commands more respect than a traffic light. This is chope culture, and breaking this unwritten law can destroy social relationships. The tissue packet system isn't just about saving seats. It represents Singapore's most fundamental social contract: trust through symbols. A 50-cent tissue packet can hold a table for hours because the entire society has agreed that this small object carries legal weight. Anthropologists study Singapore's chope culture as a masterclass in social engineering. Here's what's remarkable. In a nation obsessed with rules and regulations, this system has zero official backing. No law protects tissue packets. No police enforce table reservations. Yet it works with 99.9% compliance. The tissues reveal something profound about Singaporean psychology. In a hyper-competitive society, they've created a system based on complete trust. The tissue packet becomes a social mirror. It reflects your character back to the community. Foreign visitors who move these tissues often face silent judgment that can last their entire stay. Locals will remember the tissue violator, and the story spreads through the hawker center's invisible network. Watch for the tissue papers tomorrow. They're tiny windows into Singapore's soul. Number 3. The love language. Only 5.6 million people understand. Aya, you vary the blur, la. This sentence makes perfect grammatical sense to every Singaporean, but sounds like gibberish to the rest of the world. Singlish isn't broken English. It's the secret emotional language of a nation. Linguists call Singlish a Creole, but locals call it their heart language. It emerged from the collision of Chinese, Malay, Tamil, and English in the marketplace streets of colonial Singapore. Each word carries cultural DNA from 4 different civilizations. The government spent decades trying to eliminate Singlish through campaigns promoting proper English. They failed because you can't legislate emotion. When Singaporeans switch from standard English to Singlish, they're not just changing languages, they're revealing their authentic selves. Listen to how a Singaporean parent scolds their child. The anger comes out in Singlish. The affection comes out in Singlish. Love and frustration both speak this hybrid tongue. Here's the beautiful contradiction. Singapore's greatest economic success comes from English fluency, but its cultural identity lives in Singlish. The nation is bilingual in one language. Type 1 in the comments if you think preserving Singlish is more important than perfect English, or 2 if you believe global communication should come first. But Singlish hides Singapore's most complex relationship with its own authenticity. Number 4. The temples that share parking lots. On Waterloo Street, something impossible happens every day. A Buddhist temple, a Hindu temple, a mosque, and a Christian church stand within 100 meters of each other. They share parking spaces, their festivals overlap, and their congregations nod politely as they pass. This isn't tolerance. It's active religious choreography. During Thaipusam, Hindu devotees pierce their bodies with metal spikes and carry elaborate kavadi structures down the street, while Buddhist monks quietly continue their meditation next door. Muslim families breaking fast during Ramadan watch the procession with respectful curiosity. The government engineered this religious harmony through careful urban planning, but something deeper evolved. These faiths began borrowing from each other's aesthetics, calendars, and even philosophical concepts. Visit the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple during Chinese New Year, and you'll see Hindu families praying alongside Chinese devotees, not converting, just participating in the spiritual energy that flows between these sacred spaces. What emerges is a unique form of faith, distinctly Singaporean. It's not syncretism where religions blend together. It's parallel practice where distinct beliefs coexist in shared space. The parking lot becomes a metaphor for Singapore itself. Different vehicles heading different directions, but using the same infrastructure to reach their destinations. Yet beneath this harmony lies Singapore's greatest fear about its future identity. Number 5. The million-dollar piece of paper that changes everything. In Singapore, owning a car isn't about money. It's about winning a lottery with mathematical precision. The Certificate of Entitlement (COE) system turns vehicle ownership into an economic theater where a piece of paper can cost more than luxury apartments in other countries. Every month, the government auctions exactly 488 certificates across different vehicle categories. The bidding becomes a psychological warfare where millionaires compete against each other using algorithms, emotions, and pure desperation. A single COE can cost $70 before you buy the actual car. This means a basic Honda Civic in Singapore costs more than a BMW in Germany. The certificate expires after 10 years, and then the entire expensive cycle begins again. But here's what's brilliant. This isn't just traffic control, it's social engineering. The COE system forces Singaporeans to question whether convenience is worth extreme expense. Most choose public transport, creating one of the world's most efficient mass transit cultures. The psychological effect runs deeper. Car ownership becomes a visible marker of extreme wealth, changing how society perceives success and status. The COE transforms driving from a basic utility into a luxury performance. What fascinates economists is how this system creates artificial scarcity that people accept as normal. Singaporeans complain about COE prices but rarely question the system itself. How do you think this economic psychology affects their relationship with material desires? The COE reveals something uncomfortable about Singapore's approach to social control. Number 6. The dating revolution, hidden in HDB flat. Behind the conservative facade of Singapore's Housing Development Board apartments, a quiet revolution is reshaping Asian relationships. Young Singaporeans are rewriting the rules of courtship, creating dating customs that would shock their grandparents and surprise Western observers. DTR, define the relationship, has become a calculated process where couples negotiate relationship parameters with contract-like precision. They discuss exclusivity timelines, family introduction schedules, and marriage expectations during second dates. This isn't romance killing pragmatism, it's cultural evolution. Singapore's hyper-efficiency culture has transformed intimate relationships into optimized experiences. Dating apps show compatibility percentages. Courtship follows milestone charts. Love becomes a project with measurable outcomes. The HDB flat structure enables this revolution. Most young Singaporeans live with parents until marriage, creating unique dating logistics. Couples develop elaborate strategies for privacy. From studying in 24-hour cafes to booking hotel day passes for innocent conversations, what emerges is a dating culture more progressive than many Western societies. Conversations about sex, money, and family planning happen earlier and more honestly. The traditional Asian shame around relationships dissolves in Singapore's practical approach to human connection. Yet this efficiency-driven romance coexists with traditional elements like parental approval and elaborate wedding ceremonies that cost more than most people's annual salaries. The dating revolution reveals Singapore's complex relationship with tradition and modernity. Number 7. The wet market wisdom that governs life decisions. At 5:30 a.m. in Chinatown Complex, Singapore's largest wet market becomes a university of life where fish vendors double as philosophers and vegetable sellers offer relationship advice. This isn't shopping, it's participating in an economic ecosystem that predates the modern city-state. The wet market operates on relationship economics, where loyalty matters more than price. Regular customers receive the best cuts of meat, the freshest vegetables, and free herbs that never appear on receipts. These vendors remember your preferences, your family size, and your financial limitations. Watch an elderly uncle selecting fish. He doesn't just check for freshness. He engages in complex negotiations involving credit terms, family recipes, and community gossip. The transaction becomes a social ritual that connects individual choices to collective well-being. Here's what's profound. In Singapore's digital economy, the wet market represents the last bastion of relationship-based commerce. No QR codes, no efficiency metrics, no automated systems. Bullion, just human intuition guiding economic exchange. The vendors possess generational knowledge about food that no cookbook contains. They know which vegetables pair with specific weather patterns, which fish taste best during certain moon phases, and how to read a customer's cooking skill level from their shopping choices. This wisdom transfers beyond food into life philosophy. Market vendors become informal counselors, matchmakers, and community memory keepers. The wet market teaches Singapore's most valuable lesson about balancing progress with human connection. Number 8. The architectural rebellion against tropical logic. Singapore's skyline commits architectural heresy against tropical common sense, and the results are breathtaking. While tropical architecture traditionally emphasizes natural ventilation and weather protection, Singapore's modern buildings do exactly the opposite. They seal themselves off from nature and recreate artificial climates. The Marina Bay Sands Hotel exemplifies this rebellion. 3 towers connected by a gravity-defying infinity pool 200 meters above ground. The design ignores every principle of tropical architecture. No overhanging roofs, no natural ventilation, massive glass surfaces that absorb heat. Yet this architectural rebellion works because Singapore solved the fundamental tropical challenge through sheer engineering power. The city consumes enormous energy to air-condition its buildings, creating comfortable interiors, while the exteriors bake in equatorial sun. The Supertree Grove at Gardens by the Bay takes this further. Artificial trees taller than real ones, mechanical systems mimicking natural photosynthesis, and technology creating the illusion of enhanced nature. This approach reveals Singapore's philosophical stance. They don't adapt to the environment. They remake the environment to suit human ambition. The architecture becomes a statement about conquering natural limitations through technological superiority. Walking through Singapore feels like experiencing a climate-controlled theater, where every outdoor space connects to an indoor refuge. The buildings create an alternate tropical experience. Tropical aesthetics with Arctic comfort. But this architectural philosophy raises questions about sustainability and authenticity that Singapore hasn't fully answered. Number 9. The food stall democracy that defies economics. In hawker centers across Singapore, economic theory collapses. A Michelin-starred meal costs the same as a basic lunch. Legendary chefs work from humble stalls, and the best food often comes from the least impressive locations. This is Singapore's most successful social experiment. Hawker centers operate on subsidized rent that keeps food prices artificially low. The government maintains this system not for profit, but for social cohesion. When everyone can afford restaurant-quality meals, class distinctions blur during lunch hour. Watch the lunchtime symphony at Maxwell Food Center. Corporate executives in tailored suits queue behind construction workers in fluorescent vests, all waiting for the same 5 chicken rice. The hawker stall becomes Singapore's most egalitarian space. The vendors often possess culinary skills that would command high salaries in traditional restaurants. But they choose hawker life for independence and community connection. A single chicken rice stall might serve 500 customers daily, creating intimate relationships between cook and community. What's remarkable is how this system preserves traditional recipes while encouraging innovation. Hawker families guard secret sauces across generations, while simultaneously adapting to changing tastes and dietary requirements. The hawker culture solves Singapore's greatest social challenge, creating shared experiences across economic divisions. Food becomes the great equalizer in an otherwise stratified society. What do you think happens to social cohesion when everyone shares the same dining experiences? Share your perspective in the comments. This democratic approach to cuisine reflects Singapore's deeper values about community and accessibility. Number 10. The Green Conspiracy Against Urban Logic. Singapore is executing the world's largest urban gardening conspiracy, and most visitors never notice. The city-state has more green space per capita than most rural areas, achieved through vertical forests, rooftop gardens, and buildings that literally breathe through plant systems. Every new construction must include green space equivalent to the land area it occupies. This green building master plan creates a parallel city of plants climbing walls, colonizing rooftops, and transforming concrete structures into living ecosystems. The conspiracy goes deeper. Singapore imports soil, engineers plant species, and manipulates microclimates to create tropical gardens that shouldn't exist in such urban density. The Southern Ridges connects 8 parks through elevated walkways, creating a continuous forest canopy above city traffic. Park connector networks span 300 kilometers, allowing residents to cycle from one end of Singapore to the other without touching major roads. The green infrastructure rivals the transportation infrastructure in complexity and investment. This isn't environmental window dressing, it's climate engineering. The urban forest system reduces ambient temperature by 3–4 degrees Celsius, improves air quality, and creates psychological benefits that traditional urban planning ignores. The most audacious project is the Jewel at Changi Airport, a 40-meter indoor waterfall surrounded by terraced gardens inside an airport terminal. It challenges the boundary between built and natural environments. Singapore's green conspiracy reveals its ultimate ambition, proving that dense urban living can enhance rather than destroy natural systems. Number 11. The midnight economy that never sleeps. After the business district dims and tourists retreat to hotels, Singapore transforms into a different city with an underground economy that operates by alternative rules. This is supper culture, a nocturnal ecosystem where night shift workers, insomniacs, and social rebels keep the city alive until dawn. Geylang comes alive after midnight. The officially sanctioned red light district becomes a complex social laboratory where food stalls serve spicy frog leg porridge to taxi drivers, security guards, and late-night adventurers seeking authentic Singapore experiences. The supper economy reveals social hierarchies invisible during daylight hours. Night cleaners, hospital workers, and security staff become the primary customers, and their spending patterns support entire communities of late-night vendors. 24-hour kopitiams, coffee shops transform into informal community centers where shift workers decompress, elderly insomniacs find companionship, and young adults extend social nights beyond official entertainment hour. This nocturnal society operates with different social rules. Conversations become more intimate, economic transactions more flexible, and cultural boundaries more fluid. The night economy creates spaces for behaviors and relationships that don't fit Singapore's daytime efficiency culture. The government tolerates this parallel society because it serves economic and social functions that formal institutions cannot address. The midnight economy becomes a pressure valve for a highly regulated society. Walking through Singapore's 3 a.m. landscape reveals a gentler, more human version of the hyper-efficient city-state. Number 12. The water story that rewrote national survival. Singapore's relationship with water borders on obsession, and for good reason. This island nation turned its greatest vulnerability into a technological triumph that redefined national security. The water story reveals how scarcity can drive innovation beyond what abundance ever could. Singapore imports water from Malaysia through agreements that could be terminated, making the nation hostage to its neighbors' political decisions. This existential threat triggered a water independence mission that transformed Singapore into a global leader in water technology. New water plants recycle sewage into drinking water cleaner than most bottled water. Desalination plants extract fresh water from seawater. Rainwater harvesting systems capture every drop that falls on the island. The water recycling process is so advanced that Singapore's treated wastewater exceeds WHO drinking water standards. The psychological transformation is remarkable. Singaporeans went from fearing water scarcity to taking pride in their water technology. Newater became a brand symbol, representing national ingenuity and self-reliance. Public education campaigns made water conservation a patriotic duty. Children learned water-saving techniques alongside reading and mathematics. The national consciousness around water stewardship rivals religious devotion in its intensity. Singapore now exports water technology expertise to water-stressed nations worldwide. Their survival necessity became their international competitive advantage. The water story exemplifies Singapore's core philosophy, transforming limitation into strength through systematic innovation and social mobilization. Number 13. The heritage destruction that preserves identity. Singapore practices a form of cultural preservation that seems contradictory. They demolish historic buildings to save historical identity. This approach to heritage conservation challenges traditional notions of authenticity and reveals sophisticated thinking about cultural continuity. The Urban Redevelopment Authority systematically destroys old structures while meticulously preserving architectural elements, cultural practices, and community relationships. When they demolished old shophouses in Chinatown, they rebuilt identical facades with modern infrastructure behind historic exteriors. This isn't cultural fakery. It's cultural engineering. Singapore recognized that preserving buildings without preserving the communities and economic activities that gave those buildings, meaning creates museum districts rather than living heritage. The Peranakan houses in Joo Chiat represent this philosophy perfectly. The government restored the colorful shophouses, but ensured that traditional businesses, family restaurants, craft workshops, and community services remained economically viable within the renovated structures. Heritage preservation becomes active curation rather than passive protection. Singapore doesn't just save old buildings. It actively manages the cultural ecosystems that make those buildings meaningful to contemporary life. Critics argue this approach creates sanitized versions of authentic culture. Supporters argue it's the only way to preserve cultural practices in a rapidly modernizing society. Type 1, if you think authentic preservation means keeping everything exactly as it was. Or 2, if you believe heritage should adapt to remain relevant. The heritage philosophy reflects Singapore's broader approach to managing change while maintaining identity. Number 14. The kiasu psychology that drives everything. Understanding Singapore requires understanding kias, the Hokkien term meaning afraid to lose, that shapes every aspect of Singaporean behavior from childhood education to retirement planning. This isn't simple competitiveness. It's a cultural psychology that treats life as a zero-sum game, where others' success threatens your security. Kiasu manifests in the education system, where parents hire tutors for 3-year-olds, queue overnight for prestigious school registrations, and treat children's academic performance as family honor. The pressure creates world-class educational outcomes alongside concerning mental health statistics. The psychology extends to career choices, property investment, and social relationships. Singaporeans research restaurant reviews before dining, compare prices across multiple platforms before purchasing, and plan vacation itineraries with military precision. Queue culture reveals kiasu in its purest form. Singaporeans will join queues without knowing what they're queuing for, driven by FOMO, fear of missing out, that assumes any queue must lead to something valuable. This psychology created Singapore's economic success. The fear of being left behind drove rapid adoption of new technologies, aggressive pursuit of foreign investment, and relentless focus on staying ahead of regional competitors. Yet, kiasu also creates social exhaustion. The constant comparison and competition generate stress that contradicts Singapore's reputation for work-life balance and social harmony. Type 3. If you think kiasu psychology is necessary for a small nation's survival. Or 4. If you believe it creates more problems than benefits. The kiasu mentality explains why Singapore punches above its weight globally while struggling with domestic happiness metrics. Number 15. The silence that speaks volumes. Singapore's most powerful cultural force is what doesn't get said. In coffee shops, families practice elaborate conversational avoidance. In political discourse, certain topics exist in acknowledged silence. In social relationships, harmony is maintained through strategic non-communication. This isn't repression. It's sophisticated conflict management developed through decades of multicultural coexistence. When 4 major ethnic groups share small spaces, direct confrontation becomes unsustainable. Silence becomes a shared language for managing differences. Watch how Singaporeans handle disagreement. Rather than arguing, they employ subtle signals, changed body language, altered speech patterns, strategic topic changes. The conversation continues while the conflict exists in parallel silence. The government practices institutional silence around sensitive historical events, social tensions, and policy failures. This creates space for social cohesion while preventing the healing that comes from open acknowledgement. The silence extends to family relationships where emotional expression often happens through food, gifts, and service rather than verbal communication. Love and disappointment both speak through action rather than words. International observers often mistake this silence for political repression or cultural emptiness. But Singapore's silence is highly strategic. It allows multiple truths to coexist without forcing resolution. The silence reveals Singapore's deepest wisdom about managing complexity in small spaces with diverse populations. Step back from these individual facts and see the larger truth they reveal. Singapore isn't just a successful city-state. It's humanity's most ambitious experiment in engineering social reality. Every aspect of Singaporean life, from tissue packet table reservations to water recycling technology, represents conscious choices about how humans should organize themselves. The revelation is this: Singapore proves that culture isn't destiny. Through systematic planning, social engineering, and collective willpower, a small island with no natural resources transformed itself into a model for urban civilization that other nations study and attempt to replicate. But this success comes with a price. The very systems that created prosperity and harmony also create pressure, conformity, and existential questions about authenticity. Singapore's greatest achievement, proving that human societies can be consciously designed, also raises its greatest challenge. What happens to individual freedom and cultural spontaneity in an optimized society? The tissue packets, the underground tunnels, the architectural rebellions, and the strategic silences all serve the same purpose. They're tools for managing human behavior in service of collective success. Singapore created a society where systems work so well that people sometimes forget they're living inside a vast social experiment. What does this mean for the future of urban civilization? Can other societies replicate Singapore's successes without importing its limitations? Is Singapore's model scalable, or does it only work in specific circumstances of size, culture, and historical timing? These questions matter because Singapore represents one possible future for how humans organize themselves in an increasingly connected, resource-constrained world. Remember that building where you could be fined for a wrong step? It's not what you expected. In Singapore, the wrong step is forgetting to return your tray at a hawker center, a simple action that carries the weight of social contract, community responsibility, and national identity. The fine isn't about the tray. It's about maintaining the delicate systems that allow 5.6 million people to live harmoniously in 720 square kilometers. Every rule, every custom, every unspoken understanding serves the larger project of proving that human societies can transcend their apparent limitations. Singapore's story is ultimately about transformation, how limitations become advantages, how constraints create freedom, and how conscious choices about social organization can reshape human possibility. The island that feared water scarcity now exports water technology. The colonial trading post became a model for urban governance. The collection of immigrants became a unified nation. Perhaps Singapore's greatest lesson isn't about urban planning or economic development. Perhaps it's about the courage required to imagine society differently and the commitment needed to make that imagination a reality. In a world facing climate change, resource constraints, and social fragmentation, Singapore offers both inspiration and warning about what becomes possible when human organization becomes a conscious art rather than an accidental culture. If this journey through Singapore's hidden truths changed how you see the possibility of human organization, share it with someone who believes society cannot be consciously transformed. For those who never walk these streets themselves, these stories might plant seeds of imagination about what becomes possible when limitation meets determination. Which of these revelations challenged your assumptions most? Was it the underground cities, the water transformation, the cultural preservation through destruction, or the silence that speaks volumes? And what is your take on the DTR relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective adds to the collective understanding of what Singapore's experiment means for human possibility. And if you're ready to explore more places where human ingenuity reshapes reality, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because every culture holds secrets about how humans organize themselves, and every society offers lessons about the choices that create our shared future. The conversation about conscious social transformation starts with stories like Singapore's, but it continues with your willingness to imagine society differently.